plot at the Plainville Cemetery. This is the Catholic side of the cemetery. Over across the road was the Protestant side. So we spent most of our time over here. In this Thummel plot, there's my Aunt Dolores, who wasn't Thummel, Dolores Mallory. And she got divorced. Her husband left her, so she's buried here with her parents. And these are her parents. Rosa Thummel and John Thummel. She was a Simeon, Rosa was, and there was 3 Simeon girls married 3 Thummel boys out of that family. So, that's my grandma and my grandpa Thummel. They came from Tipton and settled in Plainville. I don't know why. And Grandpa died of a stroke. And Grandma, I don't know how she died. Actually, she just went very fast. She was in a nursing home, but we saw her the one day, and she saw Grace as a baby, and the next day she died. So anyway, then this is their son right over here. This is my uncle, Pete, and you know, he was only 50 years old when he died. He was headed to the mother house for my one cousin's, well, she was going to take become a nun, Mary Lee Mick, and he had a heart attack on the way, and ended up dying. He was kind of the black sheep of the family. He was married and had, I think he had 5 children, and decided he didn't want to be married anymore, so he skipped the Kansas. He lived out in California, where I take it at that time they didn't hunt him up, so he didn't have to pay child support. And I thought he was a great uncle. The little I've seen him, he only came back about once a year to see his mom and dad. So that's the oldest. Peter's the oldest, and Dolores down there was the youngest. So they're buried here. And then over here, I think, let's go look. See, this little Thummel grave here has got babies buried in there. I don't really know how many. I know my grandma, there was at least one, and then I think there was Aunt Marie and Aunt Dolores has babies buried in there too, but I don't know for sure. But that's, and I think Grandma's, it was a girl, and I believe her name was Clara. So that would have been my Aunt Clara, and I don't know what happened to her. I'm sorry, I don't. And how old she was when she died, I don't know. But anyway, that's a Thummel grave too. So, okay. This is another Thummel grave. This is Marilyn Thummel. She was a daughter of Uncle Pete's, and they lived around here while Uncle Pete was here, but they moved to Nebraska after he left them. But she came back here to be buried with the Thummel family. This is her last husband's tombstone over here, but he's remarried, so I don't know whether he's still alive. I don't know whether he'll come back here to be buried or not. So now we go over to my. Okay, out when he was 60-some years old, and he didn't even know it. On his birth certificate, his name was Theodore John. John being his second name, but they called him John all his life, so we left it at that. We thought his name was John Theodore, and yes, that's where you got your middle name from. And my mother's name was Ruth Constance. That's Connie's name is actually Constance. That's where her name came from. So,
does she not have a middle name?
Yeah, she had Ruth Constance. Her last name was Hoff. Before she married Dad, she was a Hoff. So, yeah. And Dad had a lot of problems.
This is middle part when they got married.
That's the date of their marriage, yeah. 22nd in 35. May 22nd, 35. They were married 50 years, see, just exactly 50 years. They celebrated 50 years before Dad died. Dad died later that year. So, and this is my brother. And he had leukemia and died in 2010. He was only 60 years old. And in his later life, he really got into being a third order Franciscan. And that is that, you're still a lay person. You don't really take the habit of the Franciscans, but you follow their rules. So he had a great devotion to St. Francis and St. Clare. So he made up his own, and that cross up there is a cross of the Franciscans, I think. And so he designed that tombstone himself, and then had it made. And then he designed this one too. This is my sister who died before I was ever born, and who your mother is named after, Grace Irene. And the reason I named your mother after her, I never realized, but my mother wanted a grandchild named after Grace, and she asked me when I was pregnant with Cindy, to name that child Grace Irene, and I didn't do it because Grace Irene was their third child, and I guess I was superstitious. I didn't want to name my third child Grace Irene, have something happen to her, so I guess, but yeah, that's who Grace Irene is, your mother is named after. She was a little over 3, I think she was 3.5. Died of an abscess on her throat. Got sick and got an abscess. They finally took her to Hayes, to the hospital, and the doctors put her under using ether to try to lance or break that, and it broke and went down her throat and smothered her to death. So Uncle John had that made for her because all she had was a footstone back here. That's all my folks could afford was the footstone. So that's the old one, and you can see it's been hit by a mower or something and cracked. So, and then after the folks were buried, some of the kids wanted to put, because this wasn't on their tombstone, but some of them wanted, that's their children.
And what does this mean?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what that means. We were going to look look it up when we went home on Memorial Day and we didn't. I know Deus is God. Any Deus is God, but Is I don't know, and Et I don't know. I don't know what it means. We'll have to find out, I guess. Now my uncle, I don't know, they had, my grandparents had Pete, my dad, Uncle Francis. Oh, Uncle Bernard is not buried here. He's buried in Kansas City someplace. He died, and they moved to Kansas City. And he died, but then they had Bernard and Angela and Dolores. And I thought both Angela and Dolores was buried here. Dolores is, but I don't know where Aunt Angie's buried. If I can't find Clarence's grave, I can't find her. Okay, you can turn it off. I really don't know that he was on. But it, like I said, it got hit. The story I heard was it got split in two, and he survived that. I don't think the whole ship survived, but he survived that. But Uncle Francis never talked about his war stories at all. We just heard about them in a roundabout way. So, but he was in the Navy and fought in World War II, and was one of the lucky ones that got home.